Hey, this is Dr. Corey Glenn, and I'm going to be showing in this video how to use the new Grammee Photogrammetry scanner. All right, so I've already released one video that was pretty long and elaborate, really talking about all the ins and outs of photogrammetry and why we do what we do. I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit more concise and just focus on actually using it and then pulling that data into the software. So just a quick reminder, what we're going to do with this process is we're going to go ahead and place our full arch implants, and we're going to place some intraoral scan bodies on, scan the arch, all right? But we fully expect that to be somewhat inaccurate, all right? Intraoral scanners to date just do not have the accuracy to get a passive full arch restoration. And so with the photogrammetry scanner, we'll come back and take another scan, and that doesn't capture tissue or the bite or any of that, but it's just capturing the implant positions, but really, really accurate. Okay, so it's going to get the implants very accurate relative to one another, and then we merge those two pieces of data in the design software of your choice. So the first step that we're going to do is we're going to do our intraoral scan. Now you could do these in reverse order, it doesn't really matter, but the way I'm showing, I'm going to do the intraoral scan first. I'm going to be demonstrating using the Aoral Scan 3, which I think is a great scanner. It's the one that I have. I am using a little bit older version of their software, but we'll just place these scan bodies onto the implants. All right, I'm using Blue Sky implants as the example, so it's the MMUSB scan body, and those are included with the Grammee scanner. We're going to do our lower arch, the upper arch, and then we're going to capture the bite. All right. Then we're going to remove those. We're going to place the photogrammetry scan bodies, capture our second scan. And then once we've captured that scan, we'll export that data and merge it together in the software. All right, so this is all of the data that's going to be generated, upper, lower with the implants. The scanner will also generate a lower, which is tissue only, with those scan bodies just virtually cut out. But the photogrammetry unit is just capturing those implant positions relative to one another, okay? So here's the demonstration case I'm going to be using. This is an upper arch for an all-on-5 opposing a natural dentition. And so with that said, let's go ahead and jump into the intraoral scanning and capture the data. Now, for the sake of time, I have time-lapsed this. The Aoral scan's an awesome scanner, but it's not this fast, so I don't want to mislead you. But again, I've placed the MMUSB scan bodies on. I'm capturing the maxillary arch. All right, this could be right after a full arch surgery while you've still got a flap. There's a lot of ways to approach integrating the data, but we're going to capture that. And usually it's either when you're ready to restore, or if you're doing like immediate load conversions, it'll probably be on the day of surgery. All right, so now I'm capturing the opposing, and so you can see I'm capturing those models, filling in any holes in my data, and then we're going to capture the bite. And that's one thing that I get a lot of questions on, is how do you capture the bite for these? And that probably warrants an entire video in and of itself. I'm doing it here on an articulator, so it's a bit hard to translate that. But you could open their bite with a leaf gauge or a Lucia jig or something like that to the correct vertical, and then have them closed in that while you get a buccal bite. You could use a reference denture, a shell denture. There's a lot of different ways you can approach this. And so I'll be making a separate video just on that topic. But we finished the scans, the data is processing, and that will now get exported, and we're ready to now start the photogrammetry scan. Okay, so we just captured our intraoral scan, and we did that with the intraoral scan bodies. So these are the scan bodies in the little holder that they come in. These are your scan bodies for intraoral scanning. These are the scan bodies for photogrammetry. And do notice that each set has got a specific number. That's important that you match those up in the software. So I'm going to go ahead and be turning the scanner on. So just one single click on the power button. You'll see these green lights kick on the cameras, but it's got a boot up sequence it's got to go through. It'll probably take about a minute or so. So as it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and launch the implant scanner software. And so here's the icon for it. And what I'm going to do is just put this over here on one side of my screen so that I can do a split screen. All right, so here's the implant scanner software. Just to show you a couple of things, if you go to settings, you've got your options for connection, and so make sure you put in the right country code. You can connect with USB cord if you would like to do that, but then you're tethered to the computer, so I would much prefer to do Wi-Fi. If you go back into general, you can see here there's a particular number on the calibration plate which you'll have to enter. You see it right back here. And it's got this little holder where you can actually stand it up and make it easy for the scanner to see. You're going to input your post set number, and these are all things you'll just have to do, the first time you set it up. And because I've already used the scanner today, it probably wouldn't force me to recalibrate, so I'm going to make it recalibrate when I first launch the case, just so that you can see that process. All right. Notice that the scanner screen has turned green in the viewfinder now. That's indicating that it's ready. And so once it is ready, I do need to connect to my wireless connection. And you can see it shows up right here as implant scanner. The Wi-Fi password is going to be in the instructions for the scanner, so let's connect to that. All right, so we're all connected now. I just need to put in the patient info. I'm going to just call this demo. And again, this is a upper all on 5, as you see here, just opposing natural dentition. You're not capturing the bite or anything with the scan. You're just capturing these implant positions on the maxillary arch. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click capture posts. All right, so the first thing it wants me to do, because I forced it, is to recalibrate my scanner. So I'll put this over here where hopefully you can see it pretty easily. Notice that there are, if I put this against the white tabletop, you see there's 4 kind of shadowy dots on each side of the screen because there's 2 cameras. And so it's the convergence of those cameras that is allowing it to pick up this data for the photogrammetry processing. So I can zoom in, zoom out, but basically I want to match up size-wise to approximately those 4 dots that are on the calibration plate. And once I do that, this is your trigger to start capturing. All right, so I'm going to get to the right distance, and I'm just going to start capturing data. And so I want to go horizontally, almost perpendicular to the scan calibration plate. And it's almost done, as you can see there. And now it's finished the calibration process. You'll see on the software it will turn to where it says you're ready to capture once it does the calibration processing. All right. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and be placing on my photogrammetry scan posts. And so again, you've got 6 of them available to you here. And they are just a cylindrical shape, which makes it really easy to grab them by hand and just tighten them on with finger pressure. You're not looking to put tons of torque on this. I'm going off memory, but the instructions indicate to do this with right around, I think, 10 Newton centimeters of force. And so what I would tell you is just go like 2 finger tight, kind of like you would a cover screw. You don't want a cover screw to get stuck on there. And so they're pretty easy to just place by hand. Well, as I say that, I'm struggling with that one. That one went on fine, I just didn't have the right angle on it. There we go. I guess that one's at a little bit more abrupt angle than the others, but about 2 finger tight. You do have a screw head here that you could use the little included screwdriver if you want to seat them that way, but I just find it easier to use my fingers to do it. So like with any kind of multi-component, you've got to get lined up right on that screw head, and then once it grabs, it goes in really easy. So the calibration is finished, as you see there. And I want to point one thing out to you here. The first time I got this, I was trying to use it and run it through its paces, and just to make my own life simple, I just thought, well, I'm gonna just do this on the bench top. So I took this model off. I told it to capture the upper posts. All right, we'll click next here. Told it to capture the upper post, told it how many I was using, and then I sat here scanning and nothing was happening. Calibration went perfectly, everything seemed to be going perfectly, and the camera was active in the background. I could see something happening, but no scan posts were being captured. And so I finally reached out and was like, hey, what's going on with this? And as it turns out, it's not going to read maxillary scan post if they're oriented like this. Think about how it is in a mouth. This would be your patient's head, and the camera's coming in from this way. And so that was the only thing, is I had them oriented like a mandible, sitting like this, and I had told it I was doing a maxilla. Okay, so the reason for that is if you had two sets of posts and you put in the upper and the lower posts, then while you're scanning the upper, it's only going to pick up ones that are oriented facing down like this, like a maxilla. And if you indicate mandible, the same thing. So it's not going to errantly pick up, the wrong arches of posts. All right, so just a really simple thing that I was unaware of until I did that. So just be aware. Tell it how many posts you're scanning. I'm going to do 5 posts. And I've moved the incisal pin just because it was going to be in my way. Obviously, you're not going to have an incisal pin in a patient's mouth. So now I'm going to hit start scan. All right. So real quick before I start, notice if I get too close, all of those little green dots that I was seeing on the scan bodies kind of disappear. All right. There's a sweet spot on the distance where the focal distance of the camera can pick these up. You want to have the image of the scan bodies in both sides of the screen. All right. I wouldn't want to be picking it up on one side and then not on the other. And then two, you ought to see those dots showing up pretty clearly. All right. So if you don't see them, chances are you're too close. All right. They go away. If I'm too far back, I'll see the green spots, but now you're losing the focus of the camera. You're just outside of the focal distance. So the sweet spot is to be about 7 to 10 centimeters away from the posts. And as long as you do that, you're not going to have any trouble with this. So when you are ready to start capturing, you're just going to hold and depress and hold the trigger button. And you're just going to kind of come laterally like this. All right, so there's my proper distance. I'm going to start capturing. 3. And as I capture them, you will hear that ding happen. All right, the software is picking all of those up. I've got 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. As soon as it captures enough data, it just shuts itself down. You're done. And that's it. So now you've captured your implant positions. All that can go to the side. That data is being transmitted to the software wirelessly. If I click next now, and at this point I'll shut down the camera and just show you my computer screen. Here's the data that it captured. There's all 5 implant positions. All right, if you wanted to rescan, you can do that now, but everything seems good. I'm going to click finish. And now all that you would have to do, if you had an opposing arch, now you could capture lower posts. All I need to do now is export the abutment meshes. All right, so I'm going to go to export abutment meshes. You got a lot of options here of what you're going to export. Do you want to do this direct to the multi-unit with any number of the screw options that we see right here? And this is something that they'll probably continually be additional parts and pieces added to this as they're requested and as they're able to integrate those. Do you want to export this to healing abutments? Because some people will scan their intraoral scan just with healing abutments. All right, those can be used as a scan body, so you would need something you can match up. You could choose a multi itself. You could, for example, Blue Sky's multi-unit analog is the BMU analog. That would be this one right here. So if I wanted to export those and treat them like a scan body, I can do that. But what I want to do here is I want to export these as scan bodies. And the one that I would recommend using, especially if you're using Blue Sky implants, is to choose this one right here, this BSB scan body aligner. All right. There's 2 versions. Let me point that out, and they're almost the same thing. One has the flats, which are actually on the intraoral scan bodies. The other does not. Use the one that doesn't, because I'll show you why that's important here in a moment. So that's the one I want to export, but I could do all of these, right? I could check on as many of these as I want. If at a later date you find you need some other piece of data, the lab needs it, whatever, you can just reopen this and export them at that point, as long as you saved your case. All right, so I'm going to export, and here they are. So it's created a folder for upper and lower jaw. Here's my upper jaw, and if I was to open these scan bodies just in a random program like Mesh Mixer, here they are. Okay. Now, in and of itself, this doesn't do me a lot of good just yet. And so what we'll have to do at this point is go into Exocad and stitch all this data. So I'm going to go ahead and close down that screen. I'm going to save the case, and I'll save it. So I've always got that. I can go back to it. And really at this point, the scanner has done its thing. I can shut down this software. All right. So that's been closed, and I'm going to just shut down the scanner now. So just press and hold for about 2 seconds. It shuts off, and then you're done. Okay, so we have completed the data capture, and as you can see here, I've got two folders open. One is my intraoral scans, and that came out of the Shining 3D software. Again, you can use any intraoral scanner that you want to. That's not critical to this technique. It's just that you get intraoral scans. So I've got those, upper with tissue only, upper with the photogrammetry scan bodies, and then the lower intraoral scan. And then my other folder here has my data that I exported from the Grammee scanner. All right, so if you're a clinician and you're not going to be doing any of the lab work, the design, or anything like that, you're just going to have the lab do that, then really at this point you're done. You just need to send all of this data to your lab. All right, now if you are going to be doing some of that yourself, or if you are the lab, we need to kind of talk about getting that data integrated. All right, so I'm going to show this in Exocad. I've gone ahead and opened up an Exocad case. This is going to be for first molar to first molar. So I'm going to go ahead and designate my prescription. We'll call this anatomic crown. And let's say we were going to do a printed restoration. All right, so I want to do it screw retained. Scan body is going to be in the main scan, and then we'll click OK, and then hold Control, and I can indicate what other teeth are going to be the implant sites. And then for the pontic sites, I'm going to do anatomic pontic. Again, just do it for 3D printing. We'll just leave all of that as is, and then we'll fix these other pontic sites to match. And then we want to splint everything together, so we're going to splint all of these sides. All right, so save that, and then we'll launch the CAD program. Okay, so load the upper jaw scan. Let's go and find that. All right, this is the upper intraoral scan with the photogrammetry scan bodies. Now it's asking for the upper jaw with scan markers. Now this is where things change a little bit, because we're going to need to now pull in the Grammee data. All right, so in my documents where I have that folder saved, we want to pull in the combined BSB scan body aligner. That's the one I suggested exporting. We'll pull that in. All right, and then finally we need to bring in the lower intraoral scan. And so back in the other folder I was just in, there's the lower intraoral scan. That's our antagonist. So we'll click OK. All right, so before I even go any further, this is what's important. Remember, you took an intraoral scan independently, you took the Grammee scan independently. Those are not going to be correlated in any way to one another at this point. All right, so number one thing we've got to do is, remember, we're trying to correct the implant positions in this somewhat inaccurate intraoral scan using these highly corrected accurate positions from the Grammee scan. And since they are unrelated to one another, the first thing I'm going to need to do is just stitch those two together. So before I do anything else, I just go ahead and go to expert mode. And under expert mode, you can go to your tools and look at align meshes. All right, got a few options. I'm going to go manually first because this is a lot easier once you get them somewhat closer to one another. I'm going to hide the antagonist. So in manual, I can just pull these over in the same proximity to one another. All right. If I wanted to just rotate this scan, because I don't want to rotate this one and pull it out of its orientation to the lower, then I just hold Control while I'm hovering on it and the widget pops up. So I'm just trying to get these pretty close to one another. And that's probably good enough. You know, I could maybe do one other thing, which is rotate that. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. This is just going to make the stitching a lot easier, but I can't do the actual stitching that way. Now I need to go back to automatic stitching, and with this method you're going to have to go ahead and indicate 3 points. All right, so you're looking for 3 common points between the data. Now notice here the one I suggested you export is the one that has no flats on it. All right, you could have done the ones with flats, but remember these scanners are not talking to one another. And so if it were to export the scan bodies with the flats, they'd be highly accurate, but those flats would be oriented differently from implant to implant because it's just making up the position. Remember, a multi-unit abutment, things can rotate freely on that. It has no timing built into it. And so if I did those, what I would end up with is the same 5 scan bodies, very accurate position wise, but every flat would be oriented differently on these from what it was in the intraoral scan, because again, it's just making it up. And so as you go to stitch that, that's going to throw it for a loop and you're not going to get a good stitch. You would end up having to ignore, you can set parts to be ignored when it's matching. You could highlight all the flats on both scans and ignore those. You're better off just to do this one. This one is just cylindrical, missing the flats, and so it won't match up in just that area, but it won't matter because everywhere else it's going to do just fine. All right, so let's put a point here. I always do the floating mesh first, all right, and then a point here, and then we could do, say, a point here, and finally we could do, say, a point here and a point here. All right, so I've indicated 3 points. I can say perform alignment, and that brings it up, just matching those points exactly, but that's not going to be stitched. At this point, you need to best fit match it. All right, and so here you can see the little color map, and the blue indicates that we've got a stitch of, right around 0.01 millimeters. That's highly, highly accurate. And to be sure, there's a lot of areas on this scan where there's a 0.01 match. That's great, right? And that does speak to the accuracy of that Shining 3D intraoral scanner that I was using, but it's still not good enough because you know what else I see? I see areas that are red, and that's up to 1/10 of a millimeter off. Okay, and then obviously in the areas of the flats, it's not even close because those flats don't exist on one of the scans. And so this is what you want to see. You want to see that tight adaptation between the two models, but you fully expect to see some error here because again, we're correcting this somewhat inaccurate intraoral scan with the photogrammetry scan bodies. So that's what you ought to see. If you look at that and it looks good, just click the X. And now you've got this data pulled into the case. At this point, we can jump back to the wizard and proceed with our workflow. So it wants us to set the orientation. We're just looking at the occlusal. Click next. I don't want to do the smile creator right now. And so now we would indicate our scan bodies. All right. So remember, the scan bodies that we're actually going to be clicking on are the green ones. Those are the corrected ones. If you just clicked here for scan body, you're still just using the regular intraoral scan data. You might as well have just not done the Grammee scan and proceeded and gotten a not so passive restoration. So we want to click on these. We've got to indicate what we're using. In my case, we're using Blue Sky Bio multi-units. When you go in with the Blue Sky Bio multi-unit library, you're going to see multiple options here. There's the MMUSB, that's the scan body that was in the intraoral scan, but there's two of them. There's one for photogrammetry, one for optical scanning. So forget photogrammetry for a moment. Let's say that you're just going to mill this in PMMA straight off an intraoral scan, and you know it's going to be somewhat non-passive, but hey, it's PMMA, it'll warp its way in, and you're just going to roll with it. At that point, you would just indicate the MMUSB for optical scanning. And if that was chosen, let me just show you here. If that was chosen, it would bring in the one that has the flats present. All right. And I would just be clicking on the model for the intraoral scan, but that's not what we're doing. We want to choose the one for photogrammetry, which is going to bring in the one that has the cylindrical portion. All right. The Blue Sky multis are not, ideally set up for just going direct to multi-unit, or I should say the Blue Sky screws are not ideally set up for it, but let's just do that for simplicity's sake. Here is that scan body, okay? And that is the exact same mesh configuration as these green ones. No flats are present, none of that. And so it's just telling me to click right here in the middle of the scan body. I'll do that and then best fit match it. That is what you want to see. That is an absolute dead-on stitch. And if you were relying on just the stitching software to do this, there might be some discrepancies, but literally the output from the Grammee scanner, the mesh is one and the same as what's in this Blue Sky multi-unit library. So there's no way that stitch can be off, and you're going to see this. It's going to be completely interdigitated. The mesh triangles are the exact same in both of them. So it's a dead-on stitch. You're not losing any accuracy by doing this route. All right, click next. We'll click the next one, best fit match it. And this goes really quick. All right, we'll do our last two. And here's the last one. All right, so now we've got all of our multi-units indicated, and they're extremely accurate to one another. So we're going to be able to design a restoration that should be as passive as we can possibly perceive. It's about as good as anything we could possibly get in dentistry. All right, this is just asking us to indicate the emergence profile, and it's going to default right here to the multi-unit, which has been aligned. So I'm going to just click next through all of these. And now you would have your tooth models come in. So based on what we just completed, that has lined up our multi-unit analogs. It's lined up all of our prosthetic components, our minimum thickness spacers. All of that stuff is going to be lined up here, and we would be ready to proceed with this. I'm not going to go through the design process here because chances are you've done that before if you're getting to this point. You could refer back to the last video I did on the Grammee scanner, which does show the design there. I converted a wax up, or you could just, once again, go back and just do it right from this. You could start setting teeth against the opposing. That's not really what I was after in this tutorial. I just wanted to show you how to integrate this data so that you could bring it in and correct the intraoral scanner and make up for the built-in inaccuracies that are going to be inherent with that and utilize this Grammee data. So at this point, design your restoration. your positions are set. It's just like doing any other kind of a hybrid case or a FP1, whatever you're doing on your individual case. But that's how this process works. Hopefully you found that useful. Um, Again, if you're a clinician, when you get to the export stage, just send that to your lab. If you're the lab, you just got to make sure you know what to do with that data, which was the second half of this video that I've been showing here. And once you get to this point, it's just like any other case that you've ever done. All right, so hopefully you found that helpful. We'll talk to you later.